They say the law is supposed to be blind, but I've seen its eyes mean, judging, and all too human. If you'd been in that courtroom with me, you'd have seen it too. Picture this. The ceiling fans whirring like they're trying to drown out the nerves, the smell of cheap aftershave and old paper in the air, and there I am standing at the defense table, white blouse, gray skirt, cane in my hand not because I'm weak, but because I damn well earned the right to lean when I please. Across from me sits Judge Thompson, a man with a gavel and an ego twice the size of his bench, staring down like he's sizing up dinner. "You must not know how to read, you black woman," he mocked, voice booming so hard it rattled the glass water pitcher. "This is a court, not a zoo for stupid monkeys. I thought you'd at least know how to dress for a trialer. Is that too much?" Yeah, that happened. I felt every set of eyes on me, some embarrassed, some eating up the spectacle. The gallery was split between those holding their breath and those barely suppressing laughter. Thompson wasn't done. "Should I draw it out in crayons for you?" he sneered, shaking his head like he couldn't believe his fate to be stuck with the likes of me. The clerk swore me in, but before I could get a word out, he cut me off again. "Can you read, Miss Jackson? Or would flashcard with jungle animals help? Maybe a monkey would make it easier for you to understand." You could hear the air thicken, a couple snickers, a few more turned faces, and my hand squeezing the cane tighter. I tried to speak honest. I did, but he raised his hand. "You speak when I say so. Who do you think you are?" That's when a tear slipped down my cheek, not from shame, but from the sting of knowing he wanted that reaction. He leaned in, satisfied. "Look at her crying. Always so emotional unless they're rioting or looting." I heard someone in the benches mutter, a bailiff look away, ashamed. "What's the charge again? Fraud? Falsifying documents? Surely not writing your own name." I took a breath, swallowed the lump in my throat, and let my voice come out steady. "Your Honor," but he slammed the gavel so hard it made a few people jump. "Who gave you permission?" That's when I decided enough. "My name is Olivia Gabriella Jackson," I said, this time loud enough for the room to feel it. "I was born in Queens. I'm 32. I speak 3 languages. I graduated summa cum laude in political science and legal studies. I have a PhD in constitutional law from Columbia." You could have heard a pin drop. I was summoned here by mistake. My name was confused with another someone who actually has a record. I'm the one who flagged the forged documents, and I alerted the authorities. I handed over evidence emails, letters, but nobody cared to look. Now, the prosecutor shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. I kept going. "I'm not the problem. I was the warning." You could see folks picking up their phones. A woman in the gallery started recording. I raised my voice. "And by the way, I'm not Miss Jackson. I'm Dr. Jackson, Human Rights Advisor to the Senate Judiciary Committee." The room practically froze. Thompson's jaw twitched, and just then, the side door opened. A tall man in a blue suit strode down the aisle, clean-shaven, badge out. "Who are you?" Thompson barked, like he'd been interrupted at his own party. The man flipped his ID. "Special Agent Samuel Rivas, Judicial Integrity Division, DOJ. We've been observing this case with great interest." The whole vibe in the room shifted, phones up, eyes wide. Thompson's face flushed, but he tried to reassert control. "This is my courtroom. I won't tolerate you call this a process," I said, steady as ever. He pointed a finger at me, face red. "This isn't Harlem. You don't parade your fake degrees here. I've seen your kind pretending to be more than you are." The temperature dropped. The room was ice. Just another black woman with delusions of grandeur. He spat, but now the energy in the room was with me, not him. That's when the twist-heighty young man in the gallery stood up, fists clenched, ready to shout down the judge. But before anything could happen, Agent Rivas stepped forward, holding an envelope. "You've been under investigation for racism, abuse of power. This trial confirmed everything." Thompson paled, sputtering. "This is a trap. No, this is justice," I said just as the back door swung open again. A silver-haired woman entered, suit sharp, glasses hanging from a chain, her heels echoing off the marble. "What are you doing here?" Thompson said, his voice suddenly small. "Elena Figueroa, President of the National Council of Judicial Ethics," she replied. "I'm here to enforce your immediate suspension." "Dr. Jackson was summoned here based on a fabricated accusation, inflated by your personal biases and racial prejudice. You have no authority, he started, but she cut him off. Enough. You have no authority anymore. You could hear the hush sweep over the room, people finally looking up, finally listening. I have something to say, I said, and Figueroa nodded. For years, I began, they looked at me like you did today, as if my skin were a crime. I studied. I worked. I endured not to prove something to you, but because I knew my worth. But you never ask who we are, you only ask how much you can break us. You were wrong about Ma, but how many have you been wrong about before? How many black women were called dumb just for not having degrees they were never allowed to earn? I turned to the gallery, to all those phones up, to everyone who ever felt invisible. You humiliated me, and I know you won't apologize, man, like you never do. You just lose power. I asked for the trial to be recorded. I wanted every second of this moment to live so that some young girl, somewhere, would see that she could rise too. 2 weeks later, I was in the state attorney general's office, complaint folder in hand. Are you sure about this, Dr. Jackson? The lawyer asked, skimming my file. More than ever, I said. They protected him for years, but for years he destroyed lives. Removing him from the bench isn't enough. He has to face the law like anyone else. He nodded, and the process began. 3 months later, it was Thompson's turn in the hot seat, no robe, no gavel, just a defendant in a cheap suit, avoiding every camera but not my stare. I stood up, not as a victim, but as a voice for everyone he'd ever silenced. This man humiliated me, I told the court. He tried to reduce me to nothing, not for anything I did, but because of who I am. This was not an isolated incident, it was a pattern. This trial is for all the others he silenced. I looked at Thompson. You're not above the law, and I am not beneath it. 6 months after that, sentencing day, Thompson found guilty on every charge, sentenced to 12 years, stripped of everything. When they cuffed him, I just watched. No joy, no celebración. As he walked past, I leaned in and whispered, now you know what it's like to be judged for what you did, not what you pretended to be. He didn't answer, just kept walking, into the same kind of cell he'd sent so many others to. You'd think that'd be the end, but life's rarely so neat. I went on, spoke at Harvard, at the UN, but my work didn't change. I went back to the neighborhoods, the places where stories like mine never made the news. Not for revenge, but because I'd seen what it felt like to stand in front of a judge who refused to see you as human. And I'd seen what happens when the world finally listens. 1 year later, I got a call, State Correctional Facility, medical wing. Are you sure you want to see him? The guard asked. Yes, I said, but not for him. In the sterile light, I walked to the glass. Thompson sat there, pale and thin, hospital gown hanging loose, struggling to breathe. Our eyes met. He reached for the phone. I picked it up. Thank you for coming, he managed. I didn't think you would. I waited. I have terminal cancer, he said. No treatment left, weeks, maybe days. I'm here, I replied. Say what you need. He told me about power, how he'd been raised to believe cruelty meant strength, that the last word was all that mattered. But I was never strong, he said, just cruel. When you spoke that day, I saw what I really was, what I destroyed to protect a lie. I can't undo it, but if you'll listen, I want to apologize. Not for myself, but for everyone I hurt. I met his ice, no hatred, no forgiveness, just truth. I didn't come here to forgive you. What you did can't be erased. But I came to tell you this, you try to break me. You failed. Who I am doesn't depend on your judgment. It depends on what I chose to become, even when no one saw me. Tears filled his eyes, and he wept, quietly, finally silenced by the truth. When you leave this world, take this with you. You didn't break me. You made me stronger. I hung up, stood, and looked back one last time. Justice exists, Mr. Thompson. You proved it. I left him there, phone dead in his hand, alone with everything he'd done. For the first time, he didn't have anything left to say. So let me ask you, what would you have done sitting in my place? Does justice really mean punishment, or does it mean changing what comes next? I want to hear what you think. Drop your thoughts below. Was it enough, or do we need to keep fighting for something more?